I remember it like it was yesterday. I was at Fort Rucker, now known as Fort Novacell. I was in P1, which is the first phase of Common Core when you actually start flying. This was probably my fourth or fifth time flying a helicopter and only my second, maybe third time doing traffic pattern work. And I was at Allen Stagefield. It was a very hot day and I couldn't do anything right, it felt like. My instructor was grilling me. And when this training day was all over, I remember walking away from Flightline that day, really questioning my own abilities and really questioning myself if flight school was something I could really get through and continue this as a professional career. Now, if you've been in aviation for a little while, we've all had these days where we just feel like we can't do anything right. Whether you're brand new to aviation and you're learning how to fly, obviously if you are learning a new skill, you're not going to be very good at it at first. And even if you've been in aviation for a while, you have a bad day. If you make a bad radio call, or maybe you shot an approach that wasn't the best, maybe winds were really bad or something like that. We all have bad days in aviation. And obviously those bad days happen less and less the more experience you get. But in the very beginning of your aviation career in flight school, you're going to have these days more often than later on in your career. And it's important to know how to overcome these days that you're going to have. Being resilient and getting through that. So in this video, I'm going to discuss some of the bad days that I've had, and hopefully you guys leave with some advice and lessons learned on going forward on how to get through this. So to understand the story a little better, I got to give you guys a little context. So in flight school, in P1 and in P2, you're going to go to these things called stagefields. These stagefields are basically kind of small airports in a way, but they're set up for training. So picture a tower, and then off of the tower you have several lanes or runways. Most people would refer to them as runways, but in Army flight school they're called lanes. So at Allen Stagefield, the stagefield that I was at on this day, had 6 lanes. On these 6 lanes, which is, just picture 6 runways basically. On these lanes, they have 4 panels. So when you're doing your traffic pattern and you come into land, the tower will assign you a lane, and they will also assign you a panel to land on, because we're helicopters, we can land to a very specific point. So these lanes and these panels are a way you can train a lot of students and control kind of the chaos going on at these stage fields. If you can imagine brand new flight students all in one area flying helicopters, it can get very chaotic very quick. And these lanes and these panels are to mitigate some of that. So we're at Allen Stagefield, 6 lanes, and we're doing traffic patterns. So just to give you a brief summary on what a traffic pattern is for new viewers out there, or maybe people who aren't at flight school yet. A traffic pattern is you're taking off from the lane and you go straight out, which is your upwind leg. You then turn 90 degrees to your crosswind leg. You fly out a little bit, and then you turn another 90 degrees for your downwind leg. You'll eventually turn another 90 degrees to turn your base leg, and then another 90 degrees for your final leg to shoot your approach to get to your panel on your lane. And that's pretty much what you're going to do, and all you're going to do for P1 and P2 is just perfect a traffic pattern. As you move into P2, there will be more complexities to that. So you won't be doing just regular old landings anymore. You'll be doing run-on landings and auto rotations. But for the most part, the traffic pattern thing is not going to change, and the stage field thing is not going to change in those 2 phases. So now that you guys understand that, we were at Allen Stagefield. And Allen Stagefield, some unique things about Allen Stagefield. So when you're a brand new pilot, a lot of these stage fields are set up so where when you take off, you have, it's like a north facing takeoff direction and a south facing takeoff direction. So they're perfect north and south depending on winds. Allen Stagefield is different. It's not perfectly facing north-south or even east-west. It's like an anti-cardinal direction. And for most people watching this, they may be like, well, why does that matter? When you're a brand new pilot and you know, like, oh, I just follow north on my nav display and I'll be perfect in my upwind. And then everything else is very easy. So 90 degrees, if I'm taking off to the north, is west. And then 90 degrees from that is south. And then 90 degrees from that is east. And then 90 degrees from that is north again. So it's very easy in your head. And all of this, the more simpler you can make things for a brand new pilot, the better. So perfect directional facing runways definitely make a difference. But here at this stage field we were at on this day, they weren't perfect cardinal direction takeoff directions. Now, there's no excuse, right? But I was a brand new pilot, and that definitely made things easier. But on this particular day, that's one thing that definitely made it a little harder. And then another thing about Allen Stagefield, so if you're flying, I think it's west, if you're taking off in the direction of west or the anti-cardinal direction of west, you are, there's a baseball field and a high school, which is a no-fly. So you have to turn early. And then there's no good roads or anything or references you can base your traffic pattern off of to kind of use as steering cues. So that makes it a little more challenging. And not to get too into the weeds of all the complexities of this stage field, because it's really not that big of a deal. I just want to give you guys a little context on this stage field was my least favorite stage field to go to. I much prefer to go to one of the other stage fields that had a perfect north-facing or south-facing runway. That way it could be a little easier on me, at least whenever I was new. Obviously now that doesn't really matter. So that was Allen Stagefield, right? And to make matters worse, this was like my second day doing traffic pattern work. So I'd take off, I would do the traffic pattern, and at first I couldn't hold that. So your heading standard when you're flying these traffic patterns are plus or minus 10 degrees. So if you're trying to hold a heading of 360, you can't be more than 10 degrees off from that heading or you're busting the standards for your ground track. So one, I was having a whole lot of trouble holding heading for whatever reason that was. Well, I know the reason. I was brand new. So that was one thing that was killing me. But the other thing was trying to maintain altitude. You only get plus or minus 100 feet. So you have to be, if your altitude, and I'm just making this number up, if your altitude is 1,800 feet, the highest you can go is 1,900 feet, and you need to be below that because that's within 100, or below, you can't go below 1,700 feet. You have to be in that 100-foot buffer or you're busting the standards. 100 feet sounds like a lot, but when you're in a helicopter at 1,800 feet, it's really not. And then what else? So the worst part of it all was whenever I was shooting my approach. So remember those panels that I was talking about? Panel 1, panel 2, panel 3 on lane, 1, 2 through 6. So whenever I turn my base, make my radio calls, tower would say, and I'll make this scenario up, tower would say something like my call sign and then say lane 6, panel 3. And then I'd repeat back the instructions and try to land on lane 6, panel 3. Now, I had no problem landing on lane 6. Where the problem came in at is landing on that panel perfectly. So every time I'd come in, I'd overshoot the panel or I'd undershoot the panel. But the standard was landing on the panel. So say I got assigned panel 3 and I kept going and overshot it and would go like right to panel 2 or just shy of panel 2 or just shy of panel 4, not on panel 3. And since this was my second time doing traffic pattern work, I remember being happy at the fact that I was just able to get to the lane and land the helicopter safely. That's what I was happy about. I didn't care that I didn't hit the panel. I was just happy that, man, I got this helicopter through this traffic pattern and I landed it on this lane. That's pretty good. It's only my 4th or 5th time, so it wasn't hard to impress myself. But my IP was just grilling me. He was like, what panel were you supposed to land on? And I'm like, panel 3. And he's like, where are we at? And I'm like, not on panel 3. And he'd be like, all right, try again. Do the traffic pattern, come back. He's just like doing this the whole time. And I was just dying inside. Like, oh my God, like, this flight needs to be over. Like, I need a breather. And so we get through the flight or whatever, and I think I was first to fly on this day. So I got in the back, and the whole time my stick buddy's flying, I'm just ready to get back to the house and get this debrief because I know I got an ass chewing coming. So we fly back to Karen's, we get debriefed, and my IP is just like, I don't know what to do with you anymore. He's like, I tell you, I give you everything that I have. I don't know what else to do for you. And I just looked at him and I was like, I just need more time. I'm going to get it right. I promise. Like, I just need more time. That's it. And he was like, I hope so. We don't have very much time. We have like a week and a half and you're checking to go into P2. And then you're going to have to do run-ons and autos and all of this other stuff. Like, you need to get it together. And I was like, I'm going to get it together. Trust me. And I remember walking out of that room thinking like, man, like, this is bad. Like, if he's coming at me like this, I must be the worst student in the world. And, to give myself a little credit, like, it was my second time doing traffic pattern work. It's like my 4th or 5th time flying a very complex helicopter. Now, the Lakota, the UH-72, is a twin turbine helicopter. It's not the standard helicopter, just, your typical general aviation helicopter pilot learns on. This is a pretty complex helicopter, so you got to give credit where credit's due. And Army Flight School is fast-tracked. You're learning what takes a general aviation helicopter pilot to learn in 2 or 3 months. You're learning that in 3 weeks. Obviously, I didn't really think about all that in the time. I was just really down in the dumps, man. And I went home, I studied. I studied my ass off because studying is something I knew I could control. And guess what? I went back to Flightline and gave it my best the very next day. And fortunately, the next day was a little better. And I made small incremental improvements. And whenever I had my P1 check ride, a week and a half after that really bad flight, I passed my P1 check ride and moved on to P2. Obviously, I'm here at a unit and a pilot now and looking to make PC soon. So we all have those bad days, and I vividly remember that one. And that wasn't my only bad day in flight school. I had a number of them, but that was probably my rock bottom in flight school. So during this time of flight school for me, I was listening to an audiobook called Dead Men Flying by Patrick Brady. For those of you who are not familiar with the history of dust-off, Patrick Brady is one of the greatest dust-off pilots there ever was. I consider him to be a founding father of dust-off. Now, Charles Kelly is credited with being the founding father, but I would consider Patrick Brady just below him, as Patrick Brady was a lieutenant in Charles Kelly's company during Vietnam. Now, Patrick Brady would go on to be awarded the Medal of Honor for a medevac mission he flew in Vietnam. Now, how does this tie in to my flight school story? I happened to be listening to this audiobook during my P1 time in flight school. And just like most people in flight school, when you're learning how to fly, you're, struggling to get through your flights and get those satisfactory marks and your write-ups and go on to pass your check ride. So as I was going through P1 and having days like I just described, this book was very inspirational. Now, my first impressions of Patrick Brady without having read the story was, man, he must have been the greatest pilot. Like, he probably got to flight school, got in the helicopter, and just was perfect. But that's actually not the story. His experiences in the U.S. Army and in Vietnam molded him to be a great pilot. But when he was in flight school, he was considered by his IP to be very dangerous and unsafe, all the way to the point that his IP did not let him solo for the first attempt. He had to go on and do a lot of retraining, and eventually he got signed off by a different IP to solo, and long story short, he ended up passing his solo and making it through flight school. But for a while, he didn't think he was going to make it through flight school because, like I just said, his IP didn't have much faith in him. But I gained a lot of inspiration from that because his story was kind of an underdog story. It was kind of like, hey man, like if Patrick Brady was struggling to get through flight school, anybody could struggle to get through flight school. So that'd be one of my pieces of advice to you guys. Pick up a book and read it. Like a lot of pilots have, if you read a aviation book, either Dead Men Flying, another one of my favorites is To the Limits. They talk about that. Great pilots. They have bad days, and they talk about all of those experiences in their books. And one of my favorites is Dead Men Flying by Patrick Brady, so definitely read that. That definitely put it into perspective, like, hey man, this is a hard career, and it takes a long time, a lot of experience to get good at this. Another thing is IP's style of teaching. So like I already said, my IP was very abrasive. If you sucked, he was going to absolutely tell you, you suck. That was his style. Some IPs may be different. I know a lot of Army IPs are very different. I've encountered a lot of them, and they're very upfront, and they'll let you know. So I would say to understand that, and to give the IPs a little credit, they do have a hard job, especially in P1. Those IPs, I mean, when you think about what they have to do, taking the majority of students that come through flight school have never touched an aircraft. They get in the cockpit with these brand new students, just like I was, and take them to go train in a very dangerous job. So right off the bat, their adrenaline's already pretty high because a flight school student is trying to kill them every single day. And that's probably how they feel. So when you're in the cockpit side right next to a flight school student that doesn't know how to fly, that's going to probably make you a little more aggressive because your adrenaline's high. I didn't really think too much about this whenever I was going through flight school, but now that I'm on the outside and I'm at a unit and I'm flying, and I have at this point 430 hours, I think back to the time when I had like 5 hours. Dude, I would have been scared shitless in a cockpit with me. I really would have, and that's not just me. I would have been scared with anybody in a cockpit with somebody who's only had 0 hours on flying a helicopter. I mean, that's pretty ballsy, and they do this for a living every single day. And it's pretty incredible to look back once you've been flying for a while, and you look back on your IP from flight school and you're like, dude, that guy taught me how to fly. That guy taught me, someone who knew nothing about flying, and got me to the point to where I could safely get in an aircraft, start it up, take off, and fly it somewhere and safely land. That is pretty incredible. So give the IPs a little credit. Yeah, some of them are abrasive. Take it on the chin. Try to learn from their tips. They have an invested interest in you succeeding. They don't want you to fail, because if you fail, they look kind of bad. It's like, oh, you know, if you were a good IP, you could teach anybody to fly, right? So they have an invested interest in you doing well. Also, if you do well, it reflects good upon them. So they have a hard job. Give them a little grace. I know it's hard to, at times, when they're berating you, but they want you to succeed. They really do. And then pretty soon, if you're currently in flight school or you're getting ready to go to flight school, you're going to be at a unit flying with an untracked PC who doesn't have all of the experience that these IPs do. And these untracked PCs are going to really depend on you to be competent pilots and to help them make decisions and to fly that aircraft safely. And pretty soon after that, you're going to be that untracked PC. And same thing, you're going to be depending on that junior pilot to help you make decisions. It goes by in a blink of an eye. And in the Army, we do a lot of dangerous stuff. You know, you're not flying, you know, general aviation, point A to point B, VFR cross country all the time. You're flying under goggles. You're landing to unfamiliar areas most of the time, a lot of the times in dust under NVG conditions, probably low illume conditions. You're doing multi-ship flights. So you need a high level of skill to do this job. So when it seems like IPs are being hard on you and all of that, they're really wanting the best for you, and because they know all the complexities that go into this job. So that about does it for today's video. I hope you guys were able to laugh at my experience and hopefully take something away. It sucks, I know. There's nothing worse than having a bad day of flying and getting berated by an IP, and that causing you to kind of question your decisions on where you're at. But trust me, you're going to have much better days. It's all going to be good. You're going to learn. If you're getting ready to go through flight school or you're currently in flight school, it seems like you're never going to get good, but trust me, you are. You just need more time. Just like I said to my IP that one day, I just need more time, boss. And that's true. You know, experience is something that can just about improve anybody. So I hope you guys took a lot away from this video. Please, if you're not subscribed, subscribe and leave a comment. Tell me your thoughts and give the video a like if you took anything away from it. I really appreciate all of the support, and until next time.